Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and we warmly welcome the family of Private Arthur George Power, whose story will be told shortly by Captain Samuel Cox of the Australian Army, who was Private Power's great-grandson. This evening, we're honoured to acknowledge Dr. Stephen Cook, Chief Executive Officer of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Ripon Lee Primary School from St Kilda East, Melbourne. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It could also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Arthur George Power. Arthur Power was born in Brentford, England on the 18th of September 1891, one of 13 children born to engineer Harry Power and his wife Frances, 9 of whom survived beyond the age of 10. Arthur spent 5 years as an apprentice with the engineering company G.W. Beldam and Company in Brentford. In September 1911, Arthur left Liverpool with his mother and 5 younger siblings on the steamship Belgie, bound for Fremantle in Western Australia. His father stayed behind in England, but eventually joined the family in Australia. The Power family settled in the Perth suburb of Bayswater. Arthur joined the West Australian Government, Railways and Tramways, and by 1914 was working as a labourer and pattern maker at the Midland Railway workshops. In December 1915, Arthur married Annie Elizabeth Beattie, a fellow English immigrant, and a daughter, Ruby, was later born to the couple. On the 13th of March 1916, Arthur was granted leave from the railways to serve with the Australian Imperial Force. He enlisted 2 days later, was allotted to reinforcements of the 28th Battalion, and began training in a camp outside Perth. Private Arthur Power departed Fremantle in the troopship Siang B on the 18th of July 1916, bound for England. During the voyage, Power found himself on the wrong side of military authorities. He was awarded 168 hours of detention for an unspecified reason and confined to quarters from the 8th of August. The remainder of the journey to England passed without excitement. He arrived at Plymouth on the 9th of September 1916 and joined a training battalion. Power proceeded overseas to France in November, joining the 28th Battalion at Flesselles in the Somme Valley in early December. Power passed the bitter winter of 1916 and 1917 in the Somme Valley with the 28th Battalion, moving between the frontline and reserve trenches. In mid-February, he was detached to the 7th Australian Machine Gun Company. There is some confusion in his service record over whether he returned to the 28th Battalion or if he remained with the Machine Gun Company for the remainder of his service. Power was based in the Somme Valley in late May 1917, when he was admitted to hospital suffering from influenza and nephritis, the swelling of the cells in his kidneys. He remained in hospital at Etapla until early August and spent another month at the Australian base depot, fully recovering his strength. Power returned to his unit on the 13th of September 1917, shortly before their transfer into the Ypres sector of Belgium. On the 20th of September, members of the 7th Brigade, including the 28th Battalion and the 7th Machine Gun Battalion, were involved in an attack on German positions along the Ypres-Menin road. While leading a party of men along duckboards towards the front line, Power was hit by the fragments of an enemy shell. An eyewitness observed that the shrapnel had wounded him very badly, with wounds to his right leg and right hand. He was immediately evacuated to the 2nd Casualty Clearing Station, where it appears his right leg was amputated as a result of his wounds. He was transferred to England in late September and admitted to a military hospital in Dover in a critical condition. Private Arthur George Power ultimately succumbed to his wounds, dying in hospital on the 25th of September 1916. He was 25 years old. Arthur Power was buried in the South Ealing Cemetery on the 28th of September, 3 days after his death. He was given a full military funeral, including a firing party and gun carriage supplied by the Australian Command in London. His father was present for the funeral, as was his older brother, Private Ernest Charles, who had enlisted in March 1917 and was training in England at the time of Arthur's death. Wreaths were laid on behalf of Arthur's mother and siblings, family friends, and the munition workers at Kingston-on-Thames. An oak cross was erected over his grave by the Australian Imperial Force, which after the war was replaced by a stone Imperial War Graves headstone. In Australia, tributes continued to pour into the local newspapers long after his death. In 1925, the railway workers at the Midland workshops unveiled a soldiers' memorial in honour of the employees who had died during the war, including Private Arthur Power. On the second anniversary of his death, Arthur's wife, family and friends inserted commemorative poems in the West Australian newspaper. The poem inserted by his mother and siblings spoke of their continuing grief, exacerbated by the death of Arthur's father in June that year. Never can our hearts forget the sorrows of the past. When grief has left so deep a wound, the pain must always last. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name, listed on the Bayswater Memorial in Perth, Western Australia, is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Arthur George Power, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres, or in the low scrib on Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.